Hello everyone, welcome back. In this part, we're going to cover CSS grid layout. So first of all, let's say we have simple container right here. And inside this div, we have 9 divs with the class name of item. And let's number them so we can see them better. And here in our CSS file, we're going to select our container first and then our items right here. So here, let's say we have background for our container. Let's say we have this kind of background here. And let's make the text colors to be some light thing. Okay, this is good. For using grid, we need to set grid to our display property. And here, if I use grid, it's going to apply to our web page. But the first property in our grid is our grid template columns. And here, we need to define the number of columns that we want in our grid layout. And this can define the width of each column. For example, here, if I want to have 3 columns, here I'm gonna use auto keyword 3 times. So how many columns that we want, we're going to set that number of auto right here. If we want this to be 4, we add another one, 5, we add another one, and this type going on. For example, let's say here we want to have 3 columns right here. But we can define how much size that we want for each column. For example, let's say we want the first one to be 50 pixels. Okay, it's going to be applied. The second one, let's say we want this to be in 300 pixels. And the last one, let's say we want this to be only in 10 pixels. And if I zoom out, you see how it's going to apply. And if I change the background color of our items to something like maybe purple right here, so you can see how it changed. And if I have simple border going on here, you can see how it's gonna change. And if I change this, for example, to 40 pixels, you see now it takes 40 pixels. And let's actually make the text inside of these to be in the center to display a little better. And let's say we have some padding going on. 20 pixels is actually padding. Yeah. Now let's make all of them to the auto mode so we can have this kind of thing going on, which is responsive and going to separate our container to 3 columns and put our items inside that. But let's say we want different size for each row in our design. So here we're going to use grid template rows right here and give the values that we want. Let's say we want to have 100 pixels for our first row, and then we want 150 pixels for our second one, and let's say maybe 50 pixels for our last one. You see that is going to be applied. And of course, if we don't use them, it's going to make auto for all of them. Just like this. But if we don't want these to be this kind of taking all space of our design, we can use our flex values that we learned in the last part. For example, we can use our justify content. And if I make this center, you see now we have our paddings right here, but they are not going to fill all of these free spaces. And of course, we can have this for flex end, flex start, and other values. Let's say here we want this to be in space evenly. Now you'll see we have this kind of design going on. And just like this, we can use our align content too. So let's make this align content to be spaced evenly again. Now you'll see if I add some height to my container, let's say 500 pixels, now you'll see how it's going to be show and change the items positions. Another way that we can have these spaces between our items is we can delete all of these ones right here, so we can have this simple 3x3 template going on. And here we have another property called column gap. And here, if I give this, for example, 30 pixel, you see now we have 30 pixel spaces between our columns. And just like this, we have another one called row gap. And if I give this 30 pixel either, you can see now we have this 30 pixel going on here too. And here we can have our shorthand of gap right here. So here, if we use, for example, 30 pixel, you'll see it's going to set both of the column gap and row gap to 30 pixel. But if we want to change that, so let's make this to be 60 pixel. Here, this is going to be applied to the row gap, and then this is going to be applied to the column gap. Now let's say we want both of them to be in the 30 pixels, but in some cases, maybe we want our first item to take, let's say, 2 places instead of 1. So here we need to have some class for this. So let's say we have another class of item 1 right here. And here, if I target that, we can use our grid column start and end to set how we want our item to be shown. So here we write our grid column start and give this the value of 1, for example. And after this, we are going to have our grid column end. And here, let's say 3. You see, now it's going to take 2 spaces instead of 1. And if you ask why we put 3 here, because we have our grid lines in our design. Here we have our first one. So this is our column line 1. This is our column line 2, 3, and 4. And for the rows, we have row line 1, row line 2, 3, and 4 again. So here you can see I can change this how I want. And if I want to end that in the 4th one, I can use 4, and that's going to take all of the space here. And pay attention, if I give this some value that is not here, for example, here we have only 4 line for our columns. If I give this 5, you see this is going to add another line and put all of the grid items inside that layout. So this is as same as we add another auto and another column to our design. So let's make this 4 again. But let's say we want the start to be started from our second line. You see now here we get our first item started from the second line and continued until our 4th one. And the same thing going for our rows. So here we can have our grid row start and grid row end right here. And let's say we want the start of our grid to be in the 1, but we want end of it to be in the 3rd one. You see now we have started from 1, covered 2, and ended in the 3. And if we use this, you see it's going to fill the empty spaces with the grid items that comes after this one. You see now we have 2 here, 3 here, and we have our 1 here. Because we define this to take only this space, and grid is going to fill this, and these one automatically. But if I don't have, for example, columns right here, and only changing the row ones, you see it's going to take this space, and these one going to fill automatically with our grid system. And another way of doing this is we can use our grid, column, and row properties. So here, first, we're going to put the number that we want our grid column start. Let's say here we want this to be 2. And then we're going to put a slash. And then after this, here we're going to put the line that we want our item to end before. So in this case, let's say 4. You see now our item is starting from our second line and ended in our last line, which is line number 2 and line number 4. And the same thing going for grid row 2. And let's say here we want this to start from the second line and end in fourth one. You see, we have started in the second, we have covered third one, and ended before our fourth line. And of course, if I have this for the 5, you can see it's going to change the template of our grid, which we defined right here, and fill the free spaces by other items and elements. Let's say we have to start from 1 and end in 3. You see, this is how it's gonna look. And another thing that we can have here is our span keyword. And pay attention, in this mode, it's going to cover our 3 and end after this 3. So if I put 2 right here, you see it's going to cover the second line and end before the one after we put right here. So in this case, it's 2. And of course, we can have, for example, 3. It's going to be as same as this one being 4. And just like this, we can have other values. 5 is like this. Span 5 is going to have another column going on. And we can have the same thing going for our grid row. So here you see we have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And if I add an span right here, you can see we are getting one more row after all of our rows. So what these are, basically, we have our grid column start, then we have our grid column end. After this, we have our grid row start, and then our grid row end. We shorthanded all of these 4 properties in these 2. And again, we can shorthand both of these and all of these one in only one property. And that is grid area we are going to use. Here, the first one is the grid row start that we put here. For example, let's say we want 2 right here. Then we put a slash right here. Then we put grid column start right here. Let's say we want that to be 2 either. And then here we can have another slash, which is going to be grid row end. And let's make this 4 right here. Now you see it took to the number 4. And let's actually make this maybe span 4, so we cover the 4th line too. And after this, we're going to put our grid column end. And let's say we want this to be 4. Now you'll see this is going to be how much space we took, and all of others going to be right here. And of course, you can use all of these with your media queries, flexbox going on. For example, here you can use your items to be flex, to be displayed flex. And let's say we want our justify content to be center, and then we want our align items to be center. Okay, we can have this just like this, so we center all of the values. Or maybe we want our justify to be in the end. We can have this, we can do anything that we want. Please give a like and subscribe to catch next videos.